make money. I spend money.
And believe it or not, she's one of the more likable people on the show. This video was sponsored by Bellesa. Everyone who signs up using my link in the description below will win a free rose with their order. The following is a list of topics that led to screaming matches between me and my family last Thanksgiving. What movie to watch? Where to order dinner from? Half cheese, half pepperoni pizzas. And actually, I stand by that one. Everyone who says they want pepperoni always ends up taking a slice of my cheese. And then when I try to stop them because I only have a finite amount of cheese, they get mad at me and tell me to take the pepperonis off of a slice. It's not the same thing. It's covered in pepperoni juice. Who gets what room? Artificial intelligence. Football. I don't even watch it. My cousins were just saying some really hurtful things about the Cleveland Browns, and I felt the need to speak up. I've never been to Ohio. Butter. Still not sure how that one happened, but it went on for hours. Finances. Religion. Politics. And to be clear, we are all aligned politically, so we weren't arguing over actual issues. We were literally arguing over the word politics. I said it was derived from the Greek polis, meaning city, and my brothers said it came from the Aristotle book about politics, Ta Politicus. And I said yes, because that was derived from the Greek polis, meaning city. Then I flipped over my dinner plate and stayed in a hotel for the night. And this is all just a long way of saying that the holidays are a very stressful time, and we all need ways to relieve that stress. Thankfully, there's Bellesa. Bellesa produces top quality adult toys for, well, anyone who uses a vibrator. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. If you're traveling home for the holidays this year, you're going to want to pack something from their Whisper collection, because the only thing worse than holiday stress is one of your family members catching you dealing with that holiday stress. There's the Whisper Bullet for those of you looking to save bag space without sacrificing power, or if you need something a little more substantial, there's the Whisper Vibe or the Whisper Rabbit, both of which have 6 different speeds. 6. All 3 of these products are ultra quiet, ensuring a discreet experience even in the fullest of households. Provided, of course, that you personally can stay quiet while using them, which will admittedly be a little bit difficult. I mean, just listen to this thing. Oh wait, you can't, it's that quiet. And if for some reason you still don't believe me, I did a little experiment. I'm going to turn these bad boys up on their highest setting. I already tell that they're pretty quiet because normally my dog freaks out at machinery. But just to prove to you how discreet they are, I'm going to make a little phone call. Put this on speakerphone.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Still good.
All right. Do you notice anything weird about this call?
It's a phone call, which we don't do because we both hate phone calls.
That's fair. All right, thank you.
Bye.
Just so you guys know, when I made that call, Matt was at home visiting his parents. There was a non-zero chance that he would have put me on the phone with them while I had 3 vibrators running. And I was willing to take that risk because I trust Bellesa products that much. And somehow things just keep getting better because, like I said, Bellesa is giving everyone who signs up using my link in the description below a free rose with their order. Consider it an early Christmas present to yourself. So thank you to Balesa for sponsoring this episode and for giving us something to actually be thankful for this year. And with that, let's get started. I've covered a lot of topics on my channel, bad movies, existential dread, foot pics. But I feel like there's one topic in particular that I'm drawn to more than most. If someone sat me down and said that going forward I had to narrow my focus to one single topic, I would say reality television. And then I'd say, where the fuck were you 5 years ago? I really could have used that advice when I was starting out. There's honestly just something so fascinating to me about reality TV. Every episode has two stories, the one being told and the one happening behind the scenes. And I truly think that when you connect the dots between the former and the latter, you can learn a lot about the world that we live in. Also, it's entertaining. Honestly, that's most of why I like it. All that nerd shit I just said only comes into play when I'm making videos. The main reason I like it is because it's fun to watch. I've never seen Game of Thrones, but I have seen cell phone footage of a woman having a meltdown because someone told people about the time that she pooped in a bag in the backseat of a van after taking too many laxatives so she could fit into a dress. And I feel very confident that whatever a red wedding is simply can't compete with that. And right now, most of you are probably thinking, wow, what you just described sounds like high art. How come you've never made a video on that? And believe me, I've considered it many times. Honestly, I would love nothing more than to make an hour-long breakdown of that lady soiling that motor vehicle, but the truth is that I don't feel qualified. That sounds like a weird thing to say without context. Let me explain. That transcendent moment I've just described to you is from an episode of The Real Housewives. And while that is technically a reality show, I also kind of consider it its own thing. All the Bravo shows are. They exist in their own ecosystem. And I think if I were to try and infiltrate that, I'd feel like a bit of an invasive species. Don't get me wrong, I definitely think I've earned my Bravo bona fides. I've watched hours of their programming, I know the lyrics to all the Housewives songs, and I went to one of Alex McCord's book signings once. I know that a lot of you don't understand what that last part means, but know that that was a dark fact about myself I just admitted. Still, there are people who devote their entire careers to covering this stuff. Believe me when I tell you, they go deep. I know because I consume a lot of their content. So while I certainly have stuff to say, I don't know how necessary it is for me to say it here. I do my best to make sure that I'm not retreading old ground with my videos, but with Housewives, I'm not sure how much new ground there is for me to tread. Still, I enjoy talking about the things I enjoy talking about. So I thought about it, and I realized that there is one season of the show that I may be uniquely qualified to discuss. Because as far as I know, I'm the only person who actually watched it. The first episode of The Real Housewives of DC premiered on August 5th, 2010. And unlike our nation's capital on that day, the reception was a bit chilly. DC gets really hot in the summer. The show currently holds a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 2.8 on IMDb. Also, if I recall, the AV Club gave the first episode a straight-up F. Which, for comparison's sake, Jack and Jill, the movie where Adam Sandler plays his own twin sister, managed to eke by with a D-, so yeah, take that as you will. And honestly, as low as those scores are, I feel like they don't really capture the vitriol that people felt towards the show when it first premiered. To give you guys a sense of what I'm talking about, I went back and found that old AV Club review, and just listen to the last sentence. It pretty much sums it up. It's the job of shows like this to provide idle escapism by showing us how the upper half really lives. But in a country where the richest few are grabbing more and more of what's on the table, and in a city that seems to be dithering away at parliamentary games while the rest of us are dying out here, that idle escapism starts to feel like a kick in the nuts. And right now, some of you may be wondering why I still remember a review I read online 14 years ago. And the reason is that I was extremely disappointed by it. I was really looking forward to this show. I guess I haven't officially said this yet, but I grew up in Washington, D.C. And like I said, I'm a pretty big fan of The Real Housewives, so this was huge for me. Even before it premiered, I was following casting rumors. I remember trying to figure out if I had heard of or possibly even knew anybody in the running. Which, speaking of, I feel like I should say up front that I actually do know one person who's on this show, not particularly well, and I hadn't met them at the time that it aired, but I figured I'd tell you guys nonetheless. It's one of those things where if you were to ask me on the street if I knew them, I'd be like, kinda, not really, but if you were to ask me in court, I'd say yes, just to be safe. It really doesn't change my opinions on the series, but for the sake of journalistic integrity, I figured I'd be upfront and say that there is a slight connection there. Not that I consider this journalism. I don't really know what this is. Obviously, I won't tell you who it is, but I can tell you that they aren't a main character, and they are very nice. From what I understand, they don't look back at their time on the show fondly, so I'm probably going to skip over discussing them whenever possible, but I will still bring them up whenever necessary, and I guess there is the potential for bias there, so judge this video accordingly. But yeah, anyway, like I said, I was very excited for this show, and though other people did not seem to share that same sentiment, I was prepared to stick it out anyway. It felt like a matter of hometown pride, you know, just as my brothers have their hearts broken every year come football season. I was prepared to watch every episode of this terrible show, no matter how terrible it got. And after watching the first episode, I was pleased to learn that it wasn't actually all that terrible. Maybe I was just biased, but I genuinely enjoyed it, and having now seen it all, I truly think it's one of the best seasons of the franchise. Of course, that is not an opinion that a lot of people share. And I get why that is. In hindsight, it makes sense that the show didn't catch on. The Real Housewives and Washington, D.C. aren't two things that really mesh all that well. Like, I feel like the show is kind of like if NPR threw a wet t-shirt contest. Anyone who may be interested in one part of that would be so turned off by the other part that it kind of ends up being for no one. Like the review said, The Real Housewives are meant to be fun, and DC is not that. It's politics and history and that one class trip you took in the 8th grade. People put on reality TV to turn off their brains, but DC is homework. Honestly, it feels like such a mismatch that it makes you wonder why they would choose DC over other cities. Why not have The Real Housewives of Baltimore, or Philadelphia, or Boston? I'd watch the shit out of The Real Housewives of Boston. That said, though, the decision actually makes a lot more sense when you remember this young go-getter right here. I feel pretty confident that had John McCain won the 2008 election, this show would not have been greenlit. But with Obama in office, DC was actually cool for the first time in ever. Like him or not, it's hard to deny that he caused a huge cultural shift. He got a nation believing in hope and change and all that other stuff that never really panned out. Suddenly, all that boring shit that people associate with DC felt aspirational. Being civically engaged was trendy, and nobody loves a trend more than The Real Housewives. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I think it would have been insane if they didn't at least attempt a Real Housewives of DC around this time, but even still, it was always going to be an uphill battle. DC could have been the trendiest city in the world, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it lends itself to a Real Housewives franchise. And actually, before I move on, I feel like I should give you guys a primer on the Real Housewives, because if I've learned one thing making stuff for YouTube, it's that a lot of you guys have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about right now, but you're watching this video anyway. Which I find fascinating. But yeah, basically it's a reality TV franchise where cameras follow a bunch of wealthy middle-aged women around as they throw parties, go on vacation, and occasionally throw drinks on one another. They're also always doing Great Gatsby-themed events for some reason, which does get really repetitive. And right now, a lot of you are probably a little bit confused, because if you're not immediately on board for that concept, then it's kind of difficult to wrap your head around why someone might spend their free time watching something like that. On paper, it sounds god-awful. And I'll admit that I was like you once. It took me a while to see the appeal of these shows. Also, not for nothing, but I think it took the shows a while before they fully figured out what makes them appealing. The franchise started in Orange County. I think there was literally just a guy living in a gated community who started filming his crazy neighbors and managed to sell it to Bravo. And Bravo was willing to take a chance on it because at that point, I think their only popular show was Queer Eye for the Straight Guys, so they were kind of just like, alright, what else do gay people like? And I still haven't really watched those earlier seasons, but as I understand it, the main drawback then was just the wealth. It was basically just lifestyle porn. It was designed to give viewers a peek into a corner of the world that normally only an elite few got to see. They put a heavy emphasis on the money. I think they literally flashed the price of everything anyone ever bought on screen as a way of being like, look at how glamorous their lives are. Which is funny because nowadays I'd say that OC is towards the bottom of the list when it comes to glamour. Take Heather Dubrow out of the mix and they're a clear last place. And again, I'm not an expert on this era, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the show really came into its own until Tamra Barney joined the cast, because Tamra is batshit insane. Just a dangerously unstable individual. I love her dearly. Here's a photo of the two of us together. And actually, to be fair, I don't know for sure that Tamara is insane. I think more than anything, she's just smart and knows what makes for interesting television. But because of that, the character she plays on TV is definitely insane. She introduced screaming into the series, and that kind of changed the game forever. It led to the show being more about the main characters' drama than their lives of luxury. Seasons started to have storylines and people you root for, and more importantly, people you root against. It kind of became like sports, but for people who drink wine instead of beer. And that's not to say that their lives of luxury stopped being important to the show. I'd say it's still as important as the drama. It's just that now it's not the only draw. I think that's what made the series so special. Other shows had drama and other shows had excessive wealth, but on The Real Housewives, those two things functioned in tandem. The money meant that the stakes were low, but the fact that they didn't have a lot of other issues to focus their energies on meant that they felt big. And that was appealing for a variety of different reasons. For starters, it gave viewers an escape. Rather than stressing out about your job or your relationship, you could spend an hour a week putting that same energy into two strangers arguing over who didn't invite who to a party, which is way more fun. There's also an element of schadenfreude to it. It's nice knowing that everyone has problems. Plus, some of them are truly awful and you like watching them suffer. Although that's not true for everyone, some of them you genuinely like. I think the parasocial element is a huge part of why people tune in. You really do get invested in their lives. And sometimes it's everything I just said all at once in a way that kind of boggles my mind. Like I feel like what other people see when they watch a Shakespeare play is what I see when I watch this.
Why would anyone leave a message? I mean, my voicemail is always full. Should I do one of those messages? Hi, you've reached Sonia. Please don't leave a message because I'll never get it. Could you just text or email? Come on, single mom, hurricane, dog got hit by a car.
It would make life so
2
much
out of
easier.
7 toilets plugged. Doing my own electrical work around here, changing light bulbs, and I got a toaster oven coming out. It's like, please text me.
I can't explain it, but I think there's something kind of primal about it. I don't know if our ancestors had a ritual where they'd choose some fair maiden and dress her up in finery before sacrificing her on an altar in front of the entire village, but if there was, I think that The Real Housewives is the natural evolution of that. Like, you know how T-Rexes are chickens now? I think it's a similar thing. There's something satisfying about it. I can try to put it into words all day, but the truth is, it sort of just sucks you in. Whatever the reason, they stumbled onto a formula that works. And when you have a formula that works, you use it again and again, and again, and again and again and again, and again. And again. Once the show found success, the network decided to branch out to another city, and they chose New York. Which makes sense. I imagine it was between that or Los Angeles, and since they already had something in Southern California, they probably wanted to see what was going on the East Coast. From there, they moved on to Atlanta, and though I can't be sure, my theory is that they needed a city with a fruit associated with it. In Orange County, they hold oranges in the opening credits, and in the Big Apple, they hold apples. Georgia Peaches feels like the natural next step there. Even if it didn't have a fruit associated with it, though, Atlanta would still make a lot of sense because it allowed for something fresh. It's in a different part of the country, and it's predominantly black, which gave them the opportunity to focus on an entirely new demographic of rich women. Those first 3 versions established the blueprint, and as the franchise continued to spread across the country, it became clear that there was a third ingredient in their special sauce. The Real Housewives was no longer just about rich women spending a lot of money and fighting over stupid shit. Now it was also about regional identity. Which sounds silly to say, but it's true. The setting is a huge part of the Real Housewives' identity. I'd go so far as to say that that's what defines each iteration. If I were to ask someone what their favorite version of the show was, I'd more than likely say, what's your favorite city? As I said, the franchise started when someone decided to film behind the gates of a gated community in Orange County. The point of it was to give viewers a peek into a part of the world that only a wealthy few had gotten to see before. I think that's why when they went to expand, the thing that they changed was the location. They could have just as easily made the Real Doctors of Orange County, but that would defeat the point. Instead, they gave us a peek into a different part of the world that only a wealthy few had gotten to see before, because ultimately, that's the appeal here. And to really ensure that viewers feel like the part of the world they're getting a peek into is actually different, the producers have to do more than just changing the location of their cameras. A successful season of The Real Housewives should essentially look like a palette swap of all the seasons that came before it. They all share the same basic form, there are just a few details here and there that make them distinct enough to qualify as their own unique thing. And obviously the fact that the cast is different from city to city is a big part of why these shows feel distinctive, but I don't think that's guaranteed necessarily. Just because someone lives in a penthouse in New York instead of a mansion in Orange County, that doesn't mean that they're going to read as distinct enough to be interesting. No city is a monolith, except for maybe Charleston. If they really wanted to, I'm sure that when Bravo went to make The Real Housewives of New York, they could have cast 5 blonde ladies who would feel equally at home in Southern California, but why bother? We're here to see The Real Housewives of New York. The women should feel like they're from New York. And that just opens up a whole new can of worms, because what does that even mean? Like I just said, only one city is a monolith, so presumably there are a lot of different types of women who feel like they're from New York. How do you choose which specific type to focus on? And though that seems like it should be a complicated question, I don't know that it actually is. I think there are a lot of people who kind of just feel the right answer in their bones. Honestly, I think it's because so many people feel it in their bones that it becomes the right answer. When the producers are assembling a new cast of The Real Housewives, I think that they have 2 goals. 1, find women who accurately reflect the city they represent. And 2, find women who live up to the viewer's preconceptions about that city. And I guess this is all just a long way of saying that I think that the foundation of every Real Housewives is stereotypes. And alcohol. But for now, I'm going to focus on the stereotypes. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to talk about The Real Housewives of New Jersey for a second, because, well, if you're looking to discuss stereotypes, that show gives you a lot to talk about. New Jersey is the only one of them to focus on a whole ass state. And like, it's a diverse state, so it feels a little bit weird that when casting the show, they chose a bunch of women with a lot of the same traits. But also it doesn't. There are a lot of very clear preconceptions that people have about New Jersey, and I think it's safe to say that the producers were doing what they could to play into those. Everyone on the show is Italian American, or at the very least they seem like they are. Many have thick accents, and they all dress in a similar style that probably wouldn't go over great with The Real Housewives of New York.
If you think I'm a bitch, then bring it on.
People make fun of Jersey girls, but I think they're just jealous.
If you're gonna mess with my family, you're messing with me.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this type of woman doesn't exist in New Jersey, but it feels pretty clear to me that the producers not only cast the show with those traits in mind, but also made a lot of choices designed to highlight them. Like, I don't think that any of them actually have ties to the mob, except for maybe Danielle Staub, but it's hard to watch that first season and not have the possibility that they do cross your mind at least once. And I think that that was intentional. Like, I'm sure that other cities have also paid for things using a big wad of cash, but as far as I can remember, we only ever see it happen in New Jersey. And we see it happen a lot. And choices like this are baked into the show's DNA. Of the cast of 5, 2 are sisters, 1 is their sister-in-law, and 1 is the sister-in-law's best friend who the 2 sisters hate with a passion. The end result is a heavy emphasis on loyalty and a hell of a lot of fighting, and it all feels too much like a couple of warring mafia families for me to believe that it was accidental. Like, I don't think that that first season was scripted or anything, but I think the producers did everything they could to make sure that it played out exactly like it did.
Prostitution whore, you are f***ing engaged 19 times? You f***ing stupid bitch! Coming to my trap! I'm done!
And I think the same could be said about all the other cities too. Though they're not all as blatant as The Real Housewives of New Jersey, I think that all the iterations of the franchise feel like they were designed to evoke the first thought people have about the place they're set. The Real Housewives of Dallas all had a slight twang. The Real Housewives of New York are neurotic, and Kind of rude. And the Real Housewives of Salt Lake have strong associations with religious trauma, either as victims or, in the case of Mary Cosby, purveyors. And this brings us back to the Real Housewives of DC, because if these shows rely heavily on cultural identity of a city they're set in, that complicates things a bit, because DC doesn't really have a cultural identity. Or I guess maybe a better way to put it would be that it has two. I want to be as sensitive with what I say next as possible, but the truth is there's no good way to say it, so I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off and blurt it out. DC is pretty much racially segregated. When I was growing up, it was predominantly black, but you would not have guessed that based on where I lived. Well, hopefully this goes without saying, but I do feel the need to state it clearly for the record. I don't think that's a good thing. And granted, things have changed a lot since the last time I lived there. Also because of Obama, but not in the good way that you might expect. Weirdly, electing our first black president was a huge boon for gentrification in our nation's capital. Even still, though, there's a pretty clear demographic divide. The most recent map I could find was from 2019, and as you can see, it's basically color blocked. That feels like a racist thing to say in this context, but I don't know, I should probably just move on. But there is a reason I'm talking about this, despite the fact that there are many ways doing so on the internet could go horribly wrong for me. And that's because I do think it's necessary to this discussion. The fact of the matter is that DC has a vibrant culture, but that culture is rooted in the city's black population, and so it doesn't really apply to everyone who lives there. As I said, I grew up in DC, but I certainly can't claim it as my culture. I've never been to a go-go, I didn't try mambo sauce until last year, and though I've been called a Bama many times, I'm still not entirely sure what it means. As is often the case, this racial divide also comes with a pretty substantial socioeconomic one as well, and that just makes this whole process that much more difficult. I mean, obviously that's bad for reasons that are more important than how it affects the production of a season of The Real Housewives, but also it does affect the production of a season of The Real Housewives. DC has all the makings of a good season of the show, you know, wealth, an interesting group of people to focus on, drama. Presumably every city has that, but those ingredients don't really mix in the way that they need to. If anything, they're diametrically opposed. As more and more wealth moves into the city, more and more of the people who give the city an identity are forced to move to the surrounding areas, stripping the city of more and more of its identity. And right now, some of you are probably saying, everywhere has a culture, Willie, even if it's boring. God, you look terrible with that haircut. And while I agree with you on the haircut thing, I'm hoping it grows out quick, I'm not sure I agree with you on that other part. I think if there's ever an area of the world that didn't have a culture, it was probably Northwest DC circa 2010. We were predominantly white. I guess we did have that on lock, but it's not like there was a specific type of white person there to latch onto. Maybe if there's a large Polish population in Foggy Bottom, that would give Bravo something to work with, but as far as I know, we were all over the map. I guess there was a high percentage of LGBT people. I'd certainly watch an all-queer Real Housewives. Although I think if they were going to go that route, they would have head on over to San Francisco. Or possibly Vermont, since odds are it would be all lesbians. Episcopalians maybe, but God knows they have no place on television. We're not northern, we're not southern, there's not really an accent that's unique to us. Seriously, I just talk like this. I guess you know a city has an identity problem when I grew up there, and I'm not even sure what to call it. Generally, I say DC, but then what's Washington? And for that matter, what's DC? How is it a city if it's the District of Columbia? And weirdly, I think this was intentional. DC's phaselessness is a feature, not a bug. What we call Washington, D.C. today was founded specifically to be the capital of the United States. And a lot of what makes it feel devoid of an identity can be traced back to that. There's a reason it's not in the north or the south. Its location was chosen because it was smack dab in the middle of the 13 original colonies. And that's because it was meant to be a middle ground. A place where a white guy from Pennsylvania and a white guy from Georgia could come and be on equal footing while they argued over how many fractions of a human to consider black people. And though the arguments may have changed, although not quite as much as you'd hope, the basic purpose of the city remains the same. It's a government town. People come from all over the country to work there on behalf of their home state. And because of that, a large portion of the city's population is from somewhere else. Often they have extremely strong ties to that somewhere else. This side of DC isn't its own thing so much as it is a microcosm of the country as a whole. It's not really a town in America, it's more America the town. And I feel like I'm rambling even more than usual in this video, so I'm going to leave a little reminder to myself here to include a timestamp so that people can jump straight ahead to this part. Hi, future me, don't forget. Because ultimately, everything up to this point was just a long way of saying that what separates the Real Housewives of DC from its peers is that it has a political bent. And in hindsight, I probably didn't need to write 15 pages in order to say that. Most of you probably could have guessed that before you even clicked on this video. I mean, if it wasn't clear from the fact that their cast photo is set in the Oval Office what aspects of DC they plan to focus on, then it probably would have become pretty clear from the first few moments of the show. Like every new Housewives location, Rodick opens with a brief voiceover telling you everything you need to know about the city you're stepping foot into. It's all very Gossip Girl. If Gossip Girl were 4 people choppily cobbled together. Which I guess she could have been. I stopped watching that show in season 2.
Washington, D.C. is the most powerful city in the world.
There's a thin line between politics and social life, and it's all about who you know.
D.C. definitely has its code of conduct.
Flaunting money doesn't impress people. The currency here is proximity to power.
This city is filled with galas and events. It's important to know which ones to attend.
This town is small. Everybody has an agenda, and there's social climbers everywhere.
To make it here, you have to watch what you say and watch what you do.
Everyone knows your business, and they will talk about it. It is not a very forgiving city.
And on paper, I think that was a great way to start things off. It sets the scene, and it makes DC seem way more interesting than it actually is. Still, while I think the editor should have won a Pulitzer for it, I also think that the introduction shows the fatal flaw of this show, and that's that, well, everything they just said is kind of true. If I were to pinpoint the exact moment they should have known that things would not work out, it was this right here.
To make it here, you have to watch what you say and watch what you do.
Because if I were to give you the exact opposite description of what a housewife should be, it would probably be that. If I were to guess what Bravo's dream cast for the Real Housewives of DC would have been, I'd say like a senator's wife, a congressman's daughter, a former press secretary, and like a pundit of some sort, all on different sides of the aisle. Preferably, the senator's wife's husband should have had a gay scandal at some point in his career. Obviously, though, that's a hefty ask, so when it didn't happen, I think they probably would have settled for anyone with an active government job. But they couldn't make that work either, even though you can't really throw a rock in DC without hitting someone who works in the government. And believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I've thrown my fair share of rocks at those nerds. By making this show, the producers boxed themselves into a bit of a catch-22. Anyone they would have really wanted to be a Real Housewife of DC would have stopped being the sort of person they would have really wanted the second they signed on to be a Real Housewife of DC. Like they said in the intro, the currency there is proximity to power. And the way you gain that is by being someone whose proximity won't jeopardize that power. And that is not a Real Housewife. Though I'm sure a lot has changed since then, at the time this was filmed, being in the government meant maintaining an image that was as bland and inoffensive as possible. And I'm not just talking about the elected officials. You'd be surprised how far down the totem pole you could go in DC and still find someone worried they'll be at the center of a scandal. Even if someone wasn't a public figure yet, there's a good chance they hope to be one day, and that meant not doing anything that might come back to bite them in the ass. The goal is to be as boring as possible in order to make connections, which I have to imagine is pretty easy for a lot of them. Most are pretty boring. Their only interest seems to be making connections. Which, like, you may think that I'm overstating that, but I'm not. I love DC, the city. I think it's a great place to, like, sit down in, but I could never live there again. It's hard to describe if you've never experienced it firsthand, but there is a switch that flips in like 80% of Washingtonians the moment they realize you're not someone who might one day further their career. You'll be talking to a stranger at a party and they'll ask you what you do, and when you respond, they won't be rude or anything, but you can kind of feel their soul leave their body. It's really weird. And that's not to say that there aren't crazy rich people in DC, it's just that the ones who don't do everything in their power to hide it don't necessarily feel very DC in the way that this show was clearly going for. And because of that, the show had to do their best to approximate DC by casting who they could and highlighting all the aspects of their lives that fit the brief. The first woman we meet is Mary.
I don't make money. I spend money.
And believe it or not, she's one of the more likable people on the show. Mary is positioned as the native Washingtonian. She earns her spot on this cast by the mere fact that she has been there her entire life.
I was born and raised in DC, and I've never left. We live in McLean, Virginia.
All right, we're not off to a great start. Although I do want to say for the record that I think it's totally fine to say you're from DC and live in Virginia. A lot of people are huge snobs about that.
There is a big difference between living in DC and living outside on the suburbs. You can't say you are a native Washingtonian and live in McLean.
But I'm not one of them. Like, I feel like if a war broke out between Virginia and DC, most people from McLean would fight on the side with DC. Which is saying something, because if that happens, DC is getting its ass kicked. Our only hope would be to get Maryland to fight with us, and that's just because Maryland fights dirty. Still, it does feel like an odd choice to open with someone who doesn't technically live in the titular city. And I think that the show knows that, so they do not waste any time proving Mary's credentials.
And we are surrounded by the CIA, Dick Cheney. Oh, Colin Powell lives across the street.
They did say that currency here is proximity to power. I'm not sure they meant it that literally, but Although to be fair, it does seem like her proximity to power isn't just physical.
My grandfather was Arthur Godfrey, the legendary TV personality, and he was very good friends with President Johnson. My dad was a lobbyist. He became personal friends with Ethel Kennedy, and we'd come over, we'd hang out, pool parties, and I have fond memories of hanging out at that Kennedy house.
I actually do remember hearing her talk about hanging with the Kennedys the first time I saw this and thinking it was a pretty big flex, but watching it this time, I looked up who Ethel was, and I realized that it means that Mary was probably swimming with RFK Jr., and it stopped feeling cool. I can think of no person on earth I'd want to share a pool with less. Outside of her childhood friends, I'm not sure how political Mary actually is, but that doesn't stop the show from trying its damnedest to bring it back to politics whenever it can.
Every year we have a photo shoot to do a holiday card. DC is a political city and it never hurts to stay connected.
She's not wrong. Had it not been for Jimmy Carter's Christmas card, Gerald Ford would have gotten a second term. Nixon got elected because of a thank you note. And this is not to imply that Mary has no political causes she believes in. She does. They're just not the ones you're expecting.
Guys are going to be good friends. Salons need to integrate. We have different hair, different needs, but why do we have to be in a different salon? There's a wave to ride here with our new administration, with the beautiful couple we have leading our country.
Yes, we can. And to be clear, that speech does not make any more sense in the context of the episode. It happens... Dipper, get up here. Come on. Come on. Get up. Just... lie down. And to be clear, that speech does not make any more sense in the context of the episode. It happens completely out of the blue. It's almost too weird to be offensive. Almost. Like, I kind of think that the producers told the cast we're more likely to give you airtime if you're talking about a political issue. And then Mary got wine drunk at her birthday and was like, okay, now's my chance. Although, color me ignorant, but is this a political issue? Do people actually care about that? I mean, based on the way they're reacting, the people she's talking to don't seem to share the same passion for the issue that Mary does, and one of them is a black hairstylist. Which makes sense. Honestly, if I were to guess the last people in the world who would want salons to integrate, it would probably be black women. I feel like that just ends in them getting worse hair care. And I feel like it's maybe not clear from the way I'm talking about her, but Mary is probably my favorite character on the show. She has a very chill vibe. The only reason I have to believe that she isn't on Xanax the entire time is that enough people thought she was on Xanax the entire time that she had to address it at the reunion.
And I enjoy wine. It's all in moderation, of course. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict, because there's been some criticism that I've looked a little glazed sometimes.
Well, we did get a lot of emails about your glazedness.
Yeah. After Mary, we meet Stacy.
DC is my town, and I thrive in it.
And Stacy is here to represent DC's majority black population. Like all of it. She has an entire demographic on her shoulders. I think if I were to go through every housewife ever and rank them based on who seemed the most normal, Stacy would probably be very close to the top of the list. She has a good job.
I am a real estate agent with Sotheby's Realty. We specialize in high-end homes, at least $1 million, but we have in our portfolio up to $150 million.
A healthy marriage.
Hey.
What's up? Oh my goodness.
Your favorite?
Yes, indeed. Mwah.
I've been married for 12 years. Jason is as funny and silly as they come.
Did you see my picture on Facebook?
And a beautiful family.
I want milk.
I have 2 beautiful kids.
We're not racing.
Jason and I are very structured people, so the kids are on a schedule as well.
Jakey Jake, the morning is gonna be here awfully fast. I love you, okay, man?
All right.
All right.
And this is all just a long way of saying that I don't fully get why she's on this show. It makes no sense to me why she'd want to do it. And it makes even less sense to me how she got cast. Actually, no, that's not true. I have a hunch why they cast her. And it's this moment right here.
I went to Harvard Business School and I met Barack Obama years ago. And I just knew that that man was going places.
Genuinely, I think that when they were casting this show, the producers were like, okay, we need at least one of them in a picture with Obama. And she was the only person they could find. Like, she phrases it weirdly, but I don't think she actually knew him. I think she just met him once. They edited it to make it seem like they were classmates, but he went to Harvard Law School and she went to Harvard Business, so I'm not sure how much their paths would have actually crossed. And you know, if I met Barack Obama once, I'd also brag about it. Hell, I met Tamara Barney once and I tell everyone, here's the picture again. But if I were introducing myself for the first time on television, and one of the first things the producers chose to tell people about me was someone I met in grad school, I'm not sure I'd feel particularly well represented. Still, the fact that she met the president once does mean that she has more political ties than other people in the cast. For example,
I give people enough rope to hang themselves, and the smart people don't.
there have been a lot of Real Housewife taglines over the years, but I think that one is easily in the top 10 worst. Doesn't really roll off the tongue. And yeah, Linda's weird, because if I were to say who the main housewife of DC was, I'd probably say her. But I also feel like she's the least DC. Linda is kind of like a skeleton of a housewife. That sounded mean because she is quite skinny, but I meant it more like she's very bare bones. Like, she almost feels like the producers went to the housewife section of Build-A-Bear and picked the most basic one, and then they didn't add any clothes or accessories. She has all the makings of a good housewife. She's got a beautiful family and home.
My lifestyle has made my children understand that what they have is a blessing. Well, I have to say the best part of my day in the casting was probably all the cute guys. We would love to laugh about that, right? But we know I've never dated a model. But the thing is that, well, none that I represent.
She's sassy.
I love being a mom, but I have no desire whatsoever to be married again. I've been married twice, and having a husband is like having more children. I have 4 already.
And she's got a hot younger boyfriend.
Why, hello.
Hi, honey. Oh my God, look at you. I love my life. And having a man is a bonus.
You look gorgeous.
Thanks, sweetheart. I'm a little disheveled. And A-Bong just happens to be a 6'5", fabulous bonus.
I think she probably could fit into any iteration of the show. And because of that, she doesn't really feel like she should be on any of them. And I think that was intentional. My theory with her is that she was meant to bridge the gap between DC and Housewives.
Walk from the water cooler Towards the end of the table, I run the top modeling agencies in Washington, D.C.
Saying you run the top modeling agency in DC is kind of like saying you run the best pizzeria in Los Angeles. Like, it's not a flex, but if I were starting the Real Housewives of Los Angeles, I don't think I would cast a pizzeria owner. That said, though, fashion is much more in line with what viewers of The Real Housewives are interested in, and it kind of seems like the producers were trying to say, like, see, DC has all that stuff too, and that would be fine, except they still try to tie her back to politics, and it just raises questions more than anything.
There are only so many fashion clients in Washington, D.C. We cater to the ambassadors, to the dignitaries. It's very elite client base.
Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Why would an ambassador need a model? Oh God, is she like a pimp? Am I even allowed to say pimp? I don't know. I think I'm just gonna move on to the next one. No good can come from digging too deep into that.
I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
That right there is Kat. And she's complicated. Of everyone on the cast, Kat is the one who I think could best hold her own on another version of The Real Housewives. She's very brash and quick-witted, and she doesn't really have a filter. And that means that when you like her, you really like her.
So did Obama know about you?
Obama and all his crew knew the romance from day one.
Gosh, so they're that close.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. Cool. But I've yet to meet him.
So he knows about you, but he doesn't
He
know
lived, he lived our whole romance with Charles.
Okay, so you need to have a party, you need to invite him over, and we'll all come.
But when you don't, you really don't.
Bush RSVP'd our wedding.
Wow.
Which
Really?
Obama didn't RSVP.
Heaven forbid. When she implied that Bush was a better man than Obama, I damn near choked on my food.
As you can tell, she's British, and I think she's meant to represent the city's transient population. Based on the way she talks about it, there's a non-zero chance she moved to DC specifically to fill that role. Still, despite seemingly only living there for a few days, I'd say that she has the most DC credentials of anyone on the show. I feel like she might be the only person from the first round of casting that actually said yes. Her husband was the White House photographer for both Bush and Obama. So while I'm not sure if she ever personally met either of them, she has a clear enough line to them that her name dropping feels a little more natural than some of her peers.
My husband Charles had a very busy day in the office today.
The White House, right?
Check this out.
Shut up. Wait a minute, why is Joe Biden looking like a rock star? Okay.
As best as I can tell, the only reason she was willing to do this show is because she truly could not give less of a shit about any of that DC stuff. The way she talks, I feel like she's the sort of person who might tell Obama that he needs a breath mint.
I'm sorry, I've been really impressed by you and all the hope you give America, but you know what, Obama? You've just gone right down in my estimations, you know?
And like, she genuinely hates DC. I don't think there's ever been a housewife with this level of vitriol towards the city she represents. Possibly Heather Dubrow. Hell, her opener was about how she wanted to get the fuck out of the city immediately.
I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
I don't get the sense that she cared enough to worry about how doing the show may have consequences down the line. It kind of just seems like she was in the area and needed a way to sell her book.
I've been writing a book on my travels and my life's experiences. My book is called Inbox Full, like a mobile, because it's full of messages.
And honestly, I would read Kat's book. She seems like she would be a good writer. She has a way with words, and Lord knows she would not hold back on giving all the juicy details. My hunch is that Kat was supposed to be the villain of the season. I kind of think that's the reason why they chose a British woman. They were trying to evoke the Revolutionary War. I know that sounds stupid, but I also really do think that that was the thought process there. They're trying to capture a vibe, and for DC, that vibe is America, so why not cast an antagonist who reminds people of America's original antagonist? The British. And there are actually a lot of little details like that throughout the episode that lead me to believe that they're almost trying to incept us. They're planting little clues in our minds to remind us that this is the DC version of the show. Admittedly, this one might be a bit of a reach, but they spend a lot of time focusing on the fact that Mary has a biometric lock on her closet so her daughter can't steal her clothes.
One finger only can open this. The only way to get in my closet is by putting my left index finger on the keypad. But when you have a daughter who shares your same size and your same style, you have to take measures into your own hands. Nobody can get in that closet except for me.
And when I first watched this, I kind of assumed that the reason the producers focused on it so much is because it's a quirky show of wealth. But the more I think about it, the more I'm wondering if maybe it was meant to evoke spy imagery. One of the most frequent depictions of DC is in espionage films, and Mary does live in McLean, which is very close to Langley, where the CIA is. Maybe the reason they focused on that as much as they did was to create some sort of association between Mary and spies. And obviously I don't mean that literally. I don't think we're supposed to think that Mary is an actual spy. Although honestly, if she were, she'd be great at it. Nobody would see it coming. I just feel like a lot of the time when you see those little finger scan thingies, it's in something set in DC. And it makes me wonder if they would have chosen to highlight it in the same way were Mary a Real Housewife of Miami. Oh God, she'd be eaten alive. I think Mary could handle being a spy, but I don't think she could handle Alexia. I don't know, maybe I'm reaching, but I do think that that's the depth the producers had to go to in order to approximate the show they wanted to make. I think had these women been portrayed without a specific view of who they needed to be in mind, people would watch this and be like, how is this the Real Housewives of DC? It seems like the producers are making whatever choices they can to make this feel like America, the town, the show. And that means incorporating politics into their classic housewifery whenever possible. And this is where things start to get complicated, because like I said, one of the backbones of Housewives is the interpersonal drama. And while you certainly can mix that with politics, the outcome is not usually fun and breezy in the way that you'd hope. The major drama this week is between Stacey and Kat. The episode ends with Stacey hosting a private dinner cooked by Janet Jackson's personal chef, and when he starts listing his other clients, things get a little bit uncomfortable.
So, Chef, who else do you cook for?
Cook for Tyra Banks. Cook for...
Oh, no, poor you.
Patrick. I cook for Patrick Ewing.
Poor, did you say poor you?
Yeah.
You don't like Tyra?
Oh, no.
Oh, I love Tyra.
Damn! All my worlds are colliding, huh? And if you're a longtime viewer of my channel, then you know that I'm with Stacey on this one, but that said, saying that you don't like Tyra Banks isn't the most controversial opinion in the world. If it is, then my comment sections are extremely controversial. So if she had stopped there, I don't think this would have been an issue. Unfortunately, she keeps going.
Tyra Banks is like, she's the most important woman on the planet in everything she does, wherever she goes, and it's really dramatic and yeah.
Why?
So Patrick's pretty good with his diet.
He did?
He was.
All right, that is a weird word to choose when criticizing Tyra. I feel like the one thing everyone can agree on about her is that she's not. Still, it seems like she's using it in a figurative British sort of way. I'm not sure if she's really voicing her criticisms all that well, but I do think that the way she feels about Tyra is something that a lot of you watching probably agree with. I mean, it's not like she's racist or anything.
Hideous! She's beautiful!
Yeah, I wasn't talking about the way she looks. She's beautiful, but she's hideous.
She's hideous?
I wouldn't want to cook for her. I wouldn't want to do anything for her.
I like her. I like her a lot. She's
I like that she's a good businesswoman. No. She's like businesswoman
She's just like
extraordinaire.
this. And you ain't got it going on, baby. I should get your ass home.
Oh my God.
Ooh. Seems a lot easier to do in cartoons. I'm not sure if I did that right. In Kat's defense, I have heard Tyra say that exact phrase before, word for word. That said, though, I do get how that could have felt a bit microaggressive. Or possibly macroaggressive. I'm very white, so I'm not sure what level of racist that was. I just know that she shouldn't have done it. Granted, it's not the most racist thing a housewife has ever done. Hell, someone on New York did blackface for Halloween, and they barely even mentioned it. And it wasn't in an early season. It happened in 2017. And that's the difference between the DC housewives and other cities. Rather than downplaying moments like that and hoping they don't get letters, they actively stoke them in order to create storylines. The episode ends with a talking head from Stacey expressing her distaste for Kat.
Kat started bashing Obama and Tyra Banks, and they all happen to be black, and
it was just a little bit off-putting.
Let's keep
Policy
we
and
just
people,
won't talk policy.
I
Policy and
agree.
people
are different. I can
How are we gonna
accept
go,
him as a
Chef?
people, but as a policy, it's whack.
Because I'm going to try that tuna, because it actually looks amazing.
She's just very brash, and I find that borderline rude. I am not a fan.
And it really seems right there that she's calling Kat a racist. And I don't know, maybe she is, but no matter how many times I watch that clip, I still can't get over how stitched together it feels. The only thing I can say for sure about what I just showed you is that it was doctored in some way. Maybe they stitched together two completely unrelated sentences, or maybe they just edited out a cough, but at the very least, I think it's fair to say that what we saw is less what Stacey said and more what the producers wanted her to say. It's entirely possible that she meant to call Kat a racist. She'd be in her right to, but honestly, I don't think that's what happened. Watch what she says again, and this time remember that in these talking heads, they're responding to questions.
Kat started bashing Obama and Tyra Banks, and they all happen to be black, and
it was just a little bit off-putting.
To me, it seems much more like she was asked, do you think Kat is racist? And she responded in a way that suggested that she didn't. Of course, conflict aversion doesn't make for compelling television, so they stitched it together with Stacey saying she doesn't like someone. Possibly Kat, but there's no way of knowing for sure. And they created drama.
I didn't answer his question, because his question was, do you think that Kat, do you still feel like that about Kat being a racist or not being comfortable around black
I've never
people?
called you that.
So it's got nothing to do with colour. Because on Andy's show, from what I can gather, you were given the perfect opportunity to put the record straight and say Kat is categorically not racist, and you didn't?
Because you keep calling yourself that. I don't know why you want to own that.
Why would I call myself a racist?
Because that word has never been used. You have brought up that word. Maybe it's from the comments you've read, but I've never accused you of that whatsoever. I said you were uncomfortable for whatever reason, and the atmosphere happened to be a black environment. That's where we were.
Well, that is implying
at the
that
time.
it's got something to do with race.
You know, honestly, don't know you that well. You know, I didn't know you that well then. So it should have been that you were just rude, ill-mannered, and impolite.
The fact that they put that at the end of the first episode makes me think that originally this was the season they were setting up. Just 8 episodes of issue-based, wine-fueled, racially charged arguments. And while I absolutely would have watched every second of that, thankfully circumstances changed, and they ended up with something a little bit different. Because remember when I said that Kat was supposed to be the villain? The reason I said supposed to is because by the end of the season, another member of the cast came around and pretty definitively snatched that title from her.
People have a hard time saying no to me, and that's just been my blessing.
That right there is Mikhail Salahi. And if there's one member of the cast you may have heard of outside of the show, it's probably her. Because here's the thing. The reason The Real Housewives of DC got so much hate when it was first released wasn't just because a lot of people didn't enjoy watching it. It also happened to be at the center of a national controversy. It currently holds the distinction of being the only installment of the franchise to be at the center of a congressional investigation, although I feel like it's only a matter of time before Salt Lake gets there too. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe this will refresh your memory.
This may be the most infamous Washington break-in since Watergate, but 2 days plus after the event, the Secret Service still can't explain how it happened. Lights flashed as celebrity seekers Mikhail and Tarek Salahi brazenly strolled uninvited into the White House state dinner and then mingled with DC's power elite. And their caper may have gone undetected had the couple not bragged about it hours later on Facebook.
Okay, there's a good chance that that didn't actually refresh most of your memories. So much news has happened since then, but I promise you, at the time, it was a huge deal. In 2009, Mikhail Salahi and her husband Tarek illegally snuck into the White House in order to attend Obama's first state dinner. And they almost certainly did it to try and impress the producers at Bravo. At their core, the Salahis are phonies. So much so that I would argue that they don't really have a core. They are two people who wanted to be on television, and so they did everything they could to make that happen. And obviously, I don't know exactly how they got cast, so take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but I do have a theory. As I spent way too long explaining, Rodick was difficult to cast. The list of people they wanted on the show and the list of people who wanted to be on the show didn't have a lot of overlap. I'm assuming. I don't know that for sure, but I really think it's true. And if it is, it created a bit of a vacuum that the people who really, really wanted to be on the show tried to fill by making themselves seem like the sort of people the producers were looking for. And of that group, the Salahis clearly wanted it the most. They did everything they could to make Mikhail seem like an ideal Real Housewife of DC, even if maybe she wasn't the best fit. For starters, she doesn't really live in DC. And like I said, I'm not a snob about people saying that they're from DC when really they're from Virginia, but she feels like she's pushing that a little. She lives on a vineyard in a town called Nokesville, which is apparently about an hour outside of the city. And I feel like even they knew that was too far away to make the cast. Which is why when they auditioned for the show, they rented a mansion and passed it off as their own.
There was a large house in your audition.
Yep, it's still
Where
there.
was that?
It's still there. We've been out here, well, we married, will be 6 years this November, so I'd say 3 years. This is just an area that sometimes we hang out. We're renovating a lot out here at the vineyard, so forgive us for pictures and things that, maybe.
Is that your house?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Although I guess to be fair, she does still spend a lot of time in DC proper.
We travel in every day to Washington, D.C. for business, charity events, dinners, meetings. So hotels have been a big part of my life, making it easier. I just like the convenience of they've spoiled me.
This just makes it the perfect weekend, right? Chocolate, champagne.
We've spent a fortune in hotels.
No, you haven't. I mean, actually, you probably have, but not to the extent that you're currently implying. She's staying at the Willard, which I don't know too much about it, but I do know that it's expensive enough that if you're staying there every day, you could probably just buy a house. It feels very clear that they're putting on a show for the producers by flaunting a level of wealth that is not an accurate reflection of their actual circumstances. Like, don't get me wrong, they're definitely rich, but I don't think that they're randomly give a diamond bracelet as a gift rich unless the cameras are rolling.
Every little girl wants to be Cinderella or have that fantasy prince, and I definitely have mine.
It's decorated with 8 carats of diamonds throughout.
I was like, wow, is this too good to be true? Wow.
They are fighting like hell to claw their way onto this show. And thank God that they did, because they are easily my favorite characters. I consider Mikhail Salahi an S-tier housewife, up there with Danielle Staub, Kelly Bensimon, Kenya Moore, Kim Richards, all the ones with diagnosable personality disorders. I try not to judge these people based on who they seem to be on the show because I don't know who they actually are. But that said, on the show, Mikhail seems like one of the dumbest people I've ever seen in my life.
President Obama, he is, when we did an event for him for Rock the Vote, he loves people. When you first look at me, you think, God, she has no substance. And it was in the Oval, you said? The Oval?
Yeah, Oval Office.
Oval Office.
Yes.
After I talk with them a little bit, they see that I have a heart of gold, and there is a whole lot of substance here. Wow.
There is not. She is nothing but artifice, which is why I think she was able to successfully worm her way onto the show. She's used to putting up a facade, so she and her husband figured out what facade looked most like a Real Housewife of DC and made her look like that. And that led to some unfortunate places.
When you were advised at the gate that your name was not on the list, why did you continue to attempt to enter when you knew you did not have final confirmation?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully assert my right to remain silent and decline to answer your question.
But I also think it made for some truly fascinating television. Other people may not feel the same way about it that I do, but I really think that The Real Housewives of DC is an important piece of media. The show was canceled after only 1 season, and it's the only city of the series that has absolutely no shot of returning. Real Housewives of Dallas is currently canceled too, but that was the show where that lady pooped in a bag that I talked about in the beginning of the video, so they'd be fools not to revive that at some point. In 2016, Bravo released a redo of sorts of the show called The Real Housewives of Potomac. Set in a wealthy suburb of Maryland and featuring an all-black cast and a much smaller emphasis on politics, it's the show that The Real Housewives of DC always should have been. Honestly, they should call it The Real Housewives of DC. It's much more The Real Housewives of DC. Certainly not The Real Housewives of Potomac. I think only one of them actually lives in Potomac, and she's currently in jail because she got like 4 DUIs. Objectively, Potomac is a much better show, but even still, I'm happy we got at least 1 season of the version set in my weird, boring, faceless, deeply problematic hometown, because in spite of itself, I think it managed to be something pretty special. The show did its best to capture the spirit of DC at the time. And like I said, the spirit of DC was the spirit of America, so whether intentionally or not, it has become this weirdly perfect encapsulation of our country in the 2010s. Not only is it a good reminder of who we were, but I truly think that buried beneath the drama and the wealth are lessons that can help us better understand how we got to where we are today. Because maybe I'm just reading too much into it, maybe it's all just a coincidence, but I truly think it's fascinating that when they went to create this show designed to be a microcosm of America in the Obama era, it ended with a con artist reality star sneaking into the White House. So yeah, I'm going to talk about this again in the future. How much I do that, though, depends on how the response to this first one goes. So if you want to see more, please like and subscribe and all that stuff. It really does show me that this is the direction you guys want to see me go in. And if for some reason the draw of The Real Housewives means that you're new here, I'd really appreciate it if you went back and checked out some of my other videos. This is my only thing about The Real Housewives, but I do have a video about Tinsley Mortimer's other show that fans of New York might like, and I'll link it in the description below. It has not aged well.
The event we're going to is for Georgina Chapman, who is one of the designers of Marchesa. Hi. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know. I love Harvey Weinstein. He's great. He is married to Georgina Chapman. Harvey is one of the most famous movie producers in the world.
Also, please hype me. It helps a lot, and I think you need to like the video to do it, but as I said, you should have already been doing that, so. But speaking of, my last video did make it onto the hype leaderboard, so now I will keep my promise and do a little dance. Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to zoom out. Thank you. Hello again. It's time for the part where I pose for a thumbnail. I should not have zoomed out that much. I don't think I framed the shot very well. Anyway, whatever. I'll pose for a thumbnail. I don't know. I kind of tired and I have a lot of editing to do, so this might not be the longest section in the world. What am I doing? Oh, Real Housewives of DC. The Real Housewives of, I think I'm going to call it like The Real Housewives of DC was a fever dream and ahead of its time. Because it really was ahead of its time. I feel like if it came out now, like it got canceled because they crashed the White House, but I feel like if it came out now, that would have been like a draw. The shows are like kind of just making true crime. They're very low stakes true crime. And I think The Real Housewives of DC would have been a home run. But whatever. I feel like I need to make myself look attractive. Because my goal for this is probably to get gay guys to click on it. And gay guys are drawn to attractive people. So that's going to be difficult. Let's see. Like, what's my best angle like? I should know how to present myself better. I feel like I'm really zoomed in. Has the top of my head been cut off this entire time? Let me see. Okay, I need to have like look really butch. Hi, my name's Butch. I'm Butch. I'm so tired. I need to remember that, like, if I write a long script, that also means that the video is longer and the editing process is longer. Because I was just like focused on like, I gotta get everything I need to say done. And then I get there and I'm like, oh fuck, I still have to record and everything? What the why is my hair like, my hairline's like a diagonal? Gay guys won't like that at all. Okay. Why do I still pose for a picture? It's always the same picture. It's just me going like, Rah. I mean, not that exactly, but like. I like that I'm like, I can't do this it's 4 minutes in. A normal person would have cut it off by now, but one more for the road. I don't know how that one turned out because I had to look straight at the camera to do it. So that's not bad. I feel like this sweater's helpful. It's roomy enough that it hides my figure a little better than some of my other ones. All right, I'm done. Goodbye. I should turn off the camera when I say that. Okay.